Welcome to the Yoga Society at SUNY Oneonta. I am Ashok Malhotra. I'm a professor of philosophy at SUNY Oneonta. I'm also the chair of the Yoga Society. The Yoga Society has been running this series where we invite scholars who not only know a great deal about yoga, meditation, and contemplative practices, but they also have some kind of experience in this particular area. Our goal is to start a dialogue between science, religion, and philosophy through the use of yoga as a model. And we are very lucky that today we have a wonderful guest from RPI, and he also taught at Columbia University. His name is Dr. Koller. He has published a number of books. His three famous books are on Indian Chinese philosophy, and the most recent one on the Indian way. He has written more than 50 articles. And he's with us, and he's going to talk to us about the contemplative practice in Taoism, in yoga, and in Zen. And along with Dr. John Koller, we also have Dr. Douglas Schrader, who is a distinguished teaching professor at SUNY Oneonta. And between three of us, we'll have a lot of fun. We'll try to explore this ancient art of meditation, which is so popular here. So I'm so happy, Dr. Koller, you're here. I'm so happy that Dr. Schrader, you're here.
Welcome. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think just to start up with yoga meditation or Taoist meditation, most of the people in the United States think that since yoga is so popular in this country, all these people from Hollywood are practicing yoga, and a lot of doctors and others are into it, and close to 15 million people are practicing it in some form or the other. They think that yoga somehow began in America. But I'm wondering is that you can just throw some light on it and tell us the ancientness of the system of yoga, and also how ancient the meditative system is in China, which we call Taoist contemplative practice.
Right, very interesting. But I understand, because in America, everything has to be new. To be new, I think, means to be not even 500 years old. But yoga is 5,000 years old. We have evidence of it being practiced in India 5,000 years ago. In China, Taoist practices, we know from some of the texts, at least 2,800 years ago was being practiced, Taoist yoga. Yeah, so it's very ancient. It's just recently been discovered, I think, in America and in Europe.
Yeah, tell us something about, what is involved in yoga contemplative practice. And most of the people I talk to here, and I've been teaching yoga for the past 25 years plus, people think that yoga is nothing more than some physical exercises. If somebody has perfected the art of 20 exercises, they call them some masters. Now, what's the true picture?
Well, I think actually the physical aspects of yoga, yoga is discipline. It really means discipline, to get control of, to be able to channel, to structure, to organize, to get power over your body and over your mind. That's really what the yoga is about.
So when you say power, you're talking about control.
Control.
Discipline. That's
right.
Taking charge of yourself.
You got to take charge, really, of your life.
Right.
It's about living more fully, more completely. Feeling inadequate, feeling insufficient, feeling that things are out of control. My life isn't as good as it could be. I want my life to be better. I want to be in charge of my life. I want more control over my life. This is what led ancient people 5,000 years ago to practice of yoga. What in China, the Taoist yoga, same idea. What's central for the practice of yoga really in India for these 5,000 years, and I think also in America today, is really the central energy that we have. It's called in Sanskrit prana. It's life energy. It's a little more than breath, but breathing is an important part of it. And that life energy, if we can find that and increase it and in some way use it so we have more physical strength and power, we can live longer, live healthier, and if we can use this in our minds so we can have some peace, some satisfaction, some freedom in our minds, so we're not always just depressed and using all of our effort just to survive, but we have some energy to live.
Now, in Chinese traditions, that energy, that life energy, is often called qi.
Yes.
And would you suggest that, in fact, it's the same energy that is being channeled and disciplined in both practices? And how are the practices similar or different, one from the other?
Well, I think that I like that, because that's the key similarity, that to regulate and control the qi is to extend the life and the power of both body and mind in Taoist yoga. It's exactly what in Indian yoga is done with the prana. I think in that respect there is no difference. So that life energy, everything depends on that life energy. And if we can somehow increase that and channel and direct it, then we can live better. Our life becomes more integrated, it becomes more complete and fuller. And that is really the aim. Now, there are some other aims, but that is fundamental, I think.
That's the fundamental aim. Now, the question which actually people usually ask is how yoga is able to somehow channelize this energy, whether you want to call it prana, you want to call it chi, or you just call it the power within, the divine energy within. Yoga, some people have understood as giving us technology, or even some people called it the art of sculpting our body with the help of a number of these physical postures. And these physical postures are very popular in the United States. Right. Also sculpting your emotions with the help of pranayama. And that's where the word prana comes in. The breathing exercise is controlling the energy. And also sculpting your mind with the help of meditation exercises. So how is this done in Taoism? Do they follow the same kind of tradition, or do they have something different?
That's a good question, Ashok, but it is also difficult.
Yes.
Because there are some really basic similarities. If you look, for example, in the yoga tradition, as you're so familiar with, many of these exercises are named after birds or animals.
Exactly.
There's the cobra.
There's the locust, there's the cow posture.
Right.
The peacock posture.
Right.
All these, those were created when the sages watched all these animals, how they relaxed. What was their most relaxing position? Or like the tiger, sticking out its tongue.
Right.
And so forth. Okay, right. So go ahead.
So we have these same names in Taoist tradition.
Okay.
We also have the owl, we have the tiger, we have the lion, we have the cobra, we have the donkey, the same. And it's the same idea that you need to find a way to sort of relax. Right. When you can relax, then you can concentrate the energy and the power and begin to direct it. So that's a really basic similarity. So that actually gives rise to another very important question. The yoga originated in India. And then we are talking about Taoism in China. How did yoga travel to China with the help of Buddhism? So we have now three traditions coming together. Right.
Yoga and its meditative practice. Then some other Buddhism adopts it. And you can talk about that part. And how the Buddhists brought that to China. And a wonderful blend of Buddhism and Taoism took place, which ultimately gave rise to Zen Buddhism.
Right.
So could you say something about that part? I know it's a very difficult question.
No, and it's very
big.
It's
a long one.
I think this is an opportunity. I can give my lecture right now, right? But it will take an hour. Okay.
Well,
because
we don't have an hour, so let's start.
Okay. So yoga really has been, as you know, practiced in India this long time. Yeah. The historical Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha, had his awakening, became the Buddha about 2,500 years ago. Before he awakened, he had been practicing yoga. There were two outstanding teachers of yoga in India at that time, the two best teachers, Arada Kalama and Udraka Ramaputta. These, everyone agreed, were the best yoga teachers. And Gautam Siddhartha, the Buddha, studied with both of these people for an extended period of time.
Now, when was that? Just give us a kind of date so that people can see that what we are talking about. Is it 500
This is
something?
2,500 years ago. It is 500 years before the Common Era, before Jesus.
Go ahead. I just wanted to pinpoint that.
Right.
Yeah.
So then he was unsatisfied with what he was able to do with the yoga. His teacher said, "You have surpassed us. We have become your students." And the Buddha said, "Not yet. I haven't yet been able to see really what causes this terrible anxiety, this incompleteness in me and in other beings. I need to be able to direct my consciousness in a way that it will penetrate into this and I'll be able to see." So he developed yoga a little further and put it in the service of awareness. We must be able to look into our experience and see what is going on right there. It's like in science we have lasers.
Right.
You shape your consciousness, shape it, develop it, turn it back on itself to illumine itself. So you can look into the center of your own being and see all the feelings and all the thoughts and see how they're connected to other feelings and thoughts and how they arise. And when you see that, you will be able to let go of the negativities. You will be able to develop what's positive. And in that way, you use a word, I think, that to my ear said shaping.
Right.
We have to
Sculpting,
shape and develop ourselves. Human life is always an ongoing process of development. We need to shape this development. The Buddha put yoga to work exactly in this way. So we should come to know ourselves clearly and have the power to shape our lives to become complete and whole, really integrate our lives.
Right, but then something very interesting happens in Buddhism, that focusing inwardly on the self, the turn is made toward compassion or karuna, where you focus on others. So can you explain how that almost complete 180 occurs?
It might have seemed like a 180-degree turn.
To many people
I
it
think
does.
it might, yeah. See, to me it seems like the same thing. If we look at the basic teaching of Buddhism, the basic teaching is that everything is always changing, nothing ever remains the same. Existence is always process, always changing. And all these processes are connected to each other. That's the key idea of Buddhism. And what the Buddha saw was that when we try to shape and develop our existence as a separate person in a permanent way, we are going against the way reality is, which is interconnected and changing. And that's what causes all of our problems. Taoism has a similar idea. For Taoism, the key idea is that of the Tao. The Tao is a path, it's a way. And the second important word is, we know from the Tao Te Ching, is De. Sometimes translated as virtue or power, but probably best translated as integration. What Taoism seeks is an integration, a wholeness, a completeness that we find in following the way things naturally are. We have to find out what it is like for us as human beings to be naturally human beings. We follow that path and we can integrate our lives following that path. So we have very similar ideas from Taoism and Buddhism.
Right.
So when Buddhism came to China, it found in Taoism a vocabulary, a set of practices and ideas that enabled the Chinese to understand and interpret Buddhism a little bit differently. The Chinese had a very strong virtue ethics, and helping others was very important. The Buddhist notion that when you see that all beings are interconnected, somehow life is shared. It's like when in a family, we all share. And when you are my brother and you hurt, I hurt. When I hurt, you hurt. When you are happy, I am happy. We feel it because we're connected. But the Buddha said, all existence is one family. And when we see that, then we share each other's joys and happinesses. And when you are my brother and you're hurting, I want to help. I really want to help you. That's compassion. When I see that you are my brother, that compassion is naturally aroused.
Right. So Buddhism and Taoism, despite the differences, both come to the conclusion that typically we've misconceived ourselves and our relationships to others.
Right.
And that through meditative practice, that we are able to see that more clearly, and then the proper behavior, the right virtuous behavior, flows naturally as a result of that, rather than something we have to force. Is that
I
fair
like,
description?
I like that, Doug. But I want to know, are you a Taoist or a Buddhist?
Well, I don't think I have to choose between.
Ah, very good. But I mean, because you could be coming from either side.
But it also takes us into the realm of Zen, which I know is an area that you've been very interested in.
Right, and it is because my talk this evening will really focus on the practice of Zazen using a set of 10 ox-herding pictures,
Right.
which are symbols of the stages of progress along the way to integration. Yes, so what was the question you asked me?
Well, but why don't we just move along to the ox herding pictures? If you can give a quick summary of those 10 pictures, as well as the historic progression that they've had in Zen, then that will open up other lines of questioning.
Okay, so let me go back to the earlier question you asked me, because it's a lead into this. We have a kind of, both in Taoism and Buddhism, we have a kind of wrong idea about who we are and what the world is in which we live and about our relations with other beings. Which means, if we have this wrong idea, that we somehow have to let go of it.
And what is that wrong idea? First, why don't you state that, What's the wrong idea according to Buddhism? What's the wrong idea about myself or about yourself?
Yeah, at the heart of it, the wrong idea is that I am separate from and independent of everyone and everything else.
Okay. So it's
And
the
what
sense of
I want
individuality.
is, I want somehow a permanent separate being. I don't ever want to die. I don't want to ever lose anything.
Right.
So I want that for myself, permanent. But there is no permanence. And we are connected. So what is wrong is this notion that I am separate and that I can be permanent in my separateness. That I have to let go of.
So I'm permanent, therefore I want to possess the world, and I'm a possessor here.
Right. And whatever threatens my permanence and my separateness, I have to get rid of.
Okay.
I have to avoid it. I have to hate it and get rid of it. So my life is full of aversion and hatred, keeping at bay everything that threatens my permanence and my separateness. That's half of me. The other half of me is always grasping, trying to get more and more that I can possess of the world for myself permanently.
That's the wrong idea.
So these wrong idea.
Okay.
Also, Taoism is very similar.
Okay.
So we have to let go of this. Letting go is really a big part of the practice. So these 10 ox-herding pictures we can see as showing stages along the way of letting go of these wrong ideas. That's all we have to do. Let go. You don't have to do anything positive, just let go. Our natural way of being in the world, if we can let go of these wrong ideas, will take over and we'll become whole and complete and feel our integration with the rest
Give
of the world.
example of these 10
10 ox
few
herding
of them,
pictures.
and what are they? Because most of the people may not know what
Uh-huh.
these are. So what is it that, so if you can describe pictorially
Okay.
what that is?
At first,
Yeah.
at first, the very first picture shows somebody, like an ox herder, parting the grasses, looking there for some footprints, some signs of something, his true self, who he really is. So this means that at this point, he's got a little inkling, not everything is right. There's a problem, and I need to find out who I really am, my true self, and that maybe I don't have it. So he's desperately searching, hoping for some little signs. Then he goes to the next picture, and there he sees some tracks along by the side of the river.
Right.
He's beginning to get a little clue, a little idea. He doesn't yet know. Then he comes and he sees, oh, the stately horns of this magnificent beast. He says, there's something here more than I thought there was. There's something more. And then in the next picture, it shows him with his whip and his rope, taming and controlling his
wild
unruly passions. The practice of yoga, getting discipline, getting control. The bridle and the rope stand for discipline
Right.
and control. So here he is beginning to apply this discipline. Next picture shows the ox now following him. He's getting control.
Right.
And then in the next picture, the sixth picture, is a wonderful picture. He's sitting on top of the ox, riding along, playing his flute, and everything is okay. Nothing more.
But it doesn't end there.
Well,
It's not just 6 pictures.
At one point, when these were just Taoist pictures, it actually ended here. He has now found his way, he has found his Tao and his integration,
Right.
the Da of the Tao. But as Buddhism got hold of it, there's a little bit more. Because ultimately, there really is no self. The self is a kind of permanent notion, as though there's some immortal soul or spirit or something. Right. But everything is just changing, everything is processed. So in the next picture, from a Zen point of view, in China it was called Chan Buddhism. Interesting story about pronunciation. If I have time, I'll come back to it, remind me. Because Zen is only Yoga Jan.
So why don't you say it, now tell us. because
Oh,
we have 5
okay.
minutes.
We interrupt.
Yeah,
We do a little
because we
parentheses.
have 5 minutes, so we can.
Very important practice
Yeah.
in yoga, India yoga, 3,000 years ago already, is the meditative part.
Right.
And the Sanskrit word for that is jhan. Jhan. In the Buddha's time, the common language was used. And in that common language, not the scholarly language of Sanskrit, it was pronounced Jan. Not Jan, but Jan. Similar. Buddhism goes to China along the Silk Route with the traders. The Buddhists were asked to come along and help them, protect them from the bandits. So that's how Buddhism went on the Silk Route to China.
So it reached
In the
China.
Chinese pronounce it, this Jan, Jan. The Japanese get hold of this word and they say Zen. We say Zen. They say Zen. This is the same word. This meditative practice. The core of yoga, meditation, is this practice of Jhan. The core of Buddhist practice is Jhan.
Okay.
Same.
See, you pronounce it again a little bit differently. When I was taught, in India it was called Dhyan. Dhyan. And then from Dhyan, it became Chan in China to Zen in Korea and Japan. Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Just change of pronunciation.
Little bit,
But
right.
it still means meditation.
Meditation.
Right.
It
Right.
means a contemplative practice
Yes.
in Hinduism of yoga, in Buddhism, in Taoism, and then in Zen.
Exactly.
Some other connect that to Zazen, and that's the way you said you're introduced to
Zazen,
meditation.
Zazen
What is Zazen?
Zazen is just sitting meditation. Za,
Yeah.
Zen, sitting meditation. And my first practice, actually, I think I told you earlier, I started practicing yoga, classical, traditional yoga, for 2 years. And then I was in Hawaii, and the famous Zen teacher, Yasutani Roshi, wonderful, came. I did my first Zen session. After that, I began to modify my practice, but I saw clearly from the beginning that Zazen practice in Zen Buddhism is jhana. It is the Sanskrit meditation. It is what the Buddha took and incorporated and modified to suit his teaching purposes. So, yeah.
So we have a couple of minutes left. If we take the meditation in India, the practice by the yogis, then meditation by the Buddhists, and Taoists, and Zen. And if we put all these together, some way you must be practicing some kind of meditation yourself.
Every day.
And you are brought up in the West, but you have studied the East very well through your books, so we can see that. What recommendations do you have for the people who are looking for an adequate way to meditate, to take control of themselves, to have a kind of integration you're talking about, so that they develop that self-confidence and they can chisel out maybe the experience of a divine life on this earth through meditation?
I guess my first advice, Ashok, would be not to be too ambitious.
Okay.
I would never advise anyone to look for life divine on this earth.
Okay.
But I advise my students, let's begin by becoming aware of ourselves. Now, easiest thing to do is to become aware of our breathing. We just breathe spontaneously, naturally. So don't do anything. Just get a nice place where you can sit comfortably without moving. Kind of find a center, a good place, nice posture, and then just pay attention, breathing in and breathing out. Become aware of your breath. Maybe count 1 in and 2 out. And count to 10, just being aware of your breath. Just try that.
Right.
And then I do this with students, and students say, oh, I didn't even get to 3. I said, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. What happened? And the student might say, well, I started thinking of the exam I have tomorrow. Oh, I thought of what my boyfriend said last night. I said, that's terrific. Now, let's do it again. And I said, what all I want you to do is just try to follow your breathing. But if you get distracted, a thought comes to your mind, a feeling you become aware of, just pay attention to it, see what it is, and then let it go, and then start counting your breathing again. And after we do this for a while, pretty soon you will become very deeply aware of your feelings and of your thoughts. The point of meditation is not to empty yourself out. The point is to be able to enter deeply into your experiences. And that's, we want to make all of life entering deeply into our experience. So when, for example, I take a sip of my juice, I really taste the juice. All of me is present in tasting the juice. When I talk to you, all of my being is present in talking. When I listen to you, it's all present. So I really can experience life fully. That's integration. It's not so hard. We have to start with something simple, because it's very
wonderful. Our time is up, but I think what you're really pointing out is that when you're anxious or you want to start meditation, start doing it with your breathing, because that's the natural process. And through that, you can take control of yourself.
Yes.
And it brings you to the present moment, because breathing is happening now, here and now. Right. Thank you very much. This is wonderful.
This was fun.
Great.
This is really
Thank
fun.
you, Dr. Schrader.
Thank you, Ashok.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Nice.
That's wonderful.
Good.
That's great.
Yeah.